into positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God. And she
After
is
decades, the state of Israel is open for questions, and you can ask them anything. And it's verified by mods. And there's a picture of Israel and with today's newspaper, and they're saying, ask me anything. Do you hear about this? Do you see this?
Was this on Reddit.com?
This was on Twitter.com.
Oh, it was on
the
Twitter?
Reddit affiliate, Twitter.com. Israel AMA. Every country has to do an AMA as part of Twitter.
Is that a UN declaration?
Yeah, it's in the Geneva Conventions under the upvote law accords. Yeah, if you could ask Israel one question, what would it be?
Why?
You can tell me. You would just say why.
What's your body count, Israel?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually.
And then it would be like a kiss and tell thing. Like,
Yeah.
You don't kiss and tell. They'd probably say that.
I'm a Zoomer, and when I say body count, I'm asking how many other states you have had sex with. But
Oh my God.
Israel might accidentally answer, we have murdered hundreds of thousands of people or something.
Yeah, you never know with them. Their state's actual body count is they're monogamous with the United States.
That's true.
They're one true husbando.
Yeah.
We give them our love.
The United States is kind of a polygamist in that way.
It's true, but they're like our prized concubine.
Yeah. Israel's our bottom bitch.
Absolutely.
We're pimping around the world with our big fat cane.
She's the one who's there to scare the other states into staying in line.
Uncle Sam is kind of dressed like a pimp.
Yeah.
You ever think
the
about
cane, the top hat, the beard?
Right. He's basically a big 1970s walking around Times Square yelling at you.
I want you to get back in your bedroom.
Yeah.
Is he designed that way? Because that's what was that? Like I want to say it was like a World War I propaganda thing, Uncle Sam originally, but does he go back before that? Because
he's a pimp.
were guys
He's
looking like
based on a
that?
local
And
pimp. That's what guys look like.
That's what people dressed like at the time. It was very common.
Yeah.
They had those tall legs. Legs used to be 6 feet high by themselves, and then bodies were normal size, and that's just how it was.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the artist had an actual Uncle Sam, and that's who he named it after. I don't think he wore the Stars
I
and
couldn't
Stripes
say
getup,
either
but-
way. I couldn't say either way, but it sounds right when you say it, and it registers with me in a real way.
A lot weirder if you didn't.
There are so many people asking Israel about the number of children they've killed on here. I would probably just break the tension, ask a question about hummus, ask about SodaStream.
Yeah. I mean, this thread has to just be like nonstop insanity, right?
Well, it's all sides just going off.
So there's like some people who are like, why are you so great?
Yeah.
The Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. There's a lot of like Epstein questions. There's questions about an American ship that was attacked. Like there's lots of right wingers in here too. There are people claiming the Holocaust is made up. As if the state of Israel is going to be like, yeah, it was. I said you could ask anything. That counts.
I mean, that's
We made it up.
that's kind of a genius deflection, though. No, because they know there's going to be those cranks, so they can just like, this is what our critics are like.
I wouldn't have done the AMA if I were the government of Israel, but
It's like being funny, kind of. This is weird. Somebody asked, what are 3 things that have made you such a powerful country? And Israel responds, brains, brawn, beauty. Oh, cheeky, the state of Israel.
the beautiful women.
Funny that you're saying that. What the fuck?
Lots of people asking about the USS Liberty. When will you leave stolen Palestinian land? They didn't answer that one.
Yeah, they're just not answering any of the ones about Palestine.
What? Again, it's just like you didn't have to do Ask Me Anything Tuesday on a different website where it doesn't exist to begin with.
I mean, there's some kid who is compulsively or has been compelled to serve in the IDF, and like this is their job instead of like driving a tank or something like that. So they're under a lot of pressure to come up with some content.
Right, they have to project deadly force into the content sphere.
Oh yeah, someone just got this job in the lottery that day.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
Like, ask me anything.
It's probably one of the beautiful ladies they always have in their Israel Instagram posts. There's this one guy who just says, "I'm so excited, I don't know what to ask. Love from Azerbaijan, we're brother." And then a picture of the Azerbaijan flag and the Israeli flag. And I think that's what they were looking for. They were just looking for just like, we are brother. And then they respond, "We love you." And that's not a question or an answer to anything.
Almost like that guy's not real, would be my guess.
Do you think so? Do you think this is just like a LAN party the Israeli embassy's having?
Yeah, I think
they're just talking to each other.
Yeah, I think that's my guess would be that's a fake account. Could be wrong.
Oh my God.
Somebody said, "What are the most important tenets of Judaism?" And then Israel responded, "Eat, pray, love, eat." They put "eat" again a second time.
You gotta feed them
because they like to eat.
They're growing. The people of Israel are all growing. Israelis are growing and they're young. Is Israel a democracy or religion state? How liberal is Israel? Israel responds, Israel is a Jewish state and a democracy.
Oh, good. Good you cleared that up.
Some said you can't have it all.
Have you seen their pizza?
I have not seen Israeli
pizza. It looks really
pizza.
Bad. It's pretty
Let's get
disgusting.
that up.
Someone said, "What's your Snap?" And then Israel said, "What's your MySpace?"
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, I think they were asking for your Snapchat.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I get that, but what they ask about?
They wanted to send nudes to Israel and have them deleted.
Oh, I get it. I got Israeli pizza up here. It looks very much bread heavy. Very like pita bread plus some cheese kind of thing happening.
That sucks.
There's a hard-boiled egg
Oh, God.
on two of these.
Well, that was a bit of an overreaction, I think. I mean, I don't like Israel either.
I hate that's
The way they did it.
Why did you do that?
I hate hard-boiled eggs.
Really?
They're disgusting. Yeah, to me, I
right.
feel like if an alien took a shit, that's what a hard-boiled egg
I've
is.
heard you say this before. That's so weird that's where your brain goes with hard-boiled eggs.
Yeah, they're freakish.
If aliens shit
slimy and
hard-boiled
smelly.
eggs, then they would be the most nutritious animals ever to exist, and we would have to be friends with them.
Chickens kind of shit out eggs.
Yeah.
Well, they don't really shit them out, though, do they? They give lovely birth to those eggs.
Well, they have a cloaca, so it's kind of the same.
Who's got you there?
God damn it, I got fucking owned.
Yeah, you got owned with facts and logic,
Egg
bitch.
podcast.
It is, yeah. So it's cloaca refuse.
Ask as Israel about this.
I mean, I like eggs in other form, but it's
I want to ask, but the AMA is, like 8 days old
to
now?
put that
I don't know,
on
I feel
pizza.
like-
Even if you like hard-boiled eggs, that's.
if I ask Israel a question now, are they going to think
That's
I'm
weird.
chuggy?
yeah.
I mean, depends on how old the kid running this account is.
I don't want Israel to say that I'm soy or whatever. I don't think I could handle that. If you give birth... Okay, so the question is, if you give birth to an egg out of a cloaca, is that shitting?
I mean, come on, this is.
And send.
You sent that to Israel?
Uh-huh.
They're probably not going to respond immediately. So
It's 10 days old. I got the dates wrong. It's a full 10 days off. They're going to be very confused why I'm sending them anything.
No, they're going to think you're asking like some roundabout question about Palestinian birth rates, and they're going to have to like really think this
Another one
through.
of these.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to be.
by Mossad.
It's just kicking my window behind me right
They
now.
have very particular, rules about. They'll say, "Oh, we have a full democracy for everybody who's a citizen," but they do monitor.
The
who
Torah
gets
covers
the
all rules of the cloaca early on, and it is forbidden to cover them any other way. Welcome to Pod Damn America, the #1 show where we read you Israel's Twitter feed 10 days later.
Yeah. Egg podcast.
And Egg Podcast.
Please don't rebrand us.
And we're your hosts.
Oh!
I'm Egglix Patak.
Egglers Lee here.
Scrambled Lee here.
And Scrambled Lee and Baked Flores.
Yeah,
Baked Egg Flores.
Like a baked egg.
Like
baked
a
egg is all right.
egg.
The dish
what's
we are all familiar with.
The worst thing about the hard-boiled egg
I think it's real.
because the hard yolk is to me really disgusting. The chalkiness and it smells bad. But what's terrible is when it gets that gray ring between
that's the best
yolk.
part.
Ugh, really?
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I'm just saying this to fuck with you. I
I
don't
do
know.
like the gray ring.
I kind of understand where you're coming from, but I would have never thought to like get this grossed out by it.
Honestly, if somebody's going to defend hard-boiled eggs on this podcast, it's me, because I'd be eating. I used to sneak them into the movie theater.
Oh, why?
Peel them in there. They got a lot of protein in the egg.
What about a deviled egg?
As long as nobody's
That's
smelling
still
it.
gross.
Deviled eggs are yummy because they have the mustard and stuff on. They have the
it's-
flavors
That's
on it.
basically what it is, right? It's just a hard-boiled egg with paprika
In
and
the
mustard.
darkness of a movie theater, you can't sneak a deviled egg because you're going to get mustard all over your hands.
Yeah, no, it's too risky.
I mean,
Although,
they serve
don't
hot
sneak a
dogs.
hard-boiled egg unless it's already pre-peeled. That's what I learned.
Okay.
Wait, what?
If you peel it
pre-peel it?
beforehand and then put it in a hard container so it's not crushed, then you will be able to enjoy your protein snack in the movie theater.
Oh.
If you leave the shell on, you're going to be in a black room trying to get all of the shell off of an egg, and everyone's going to be like listening to it.
During a quiet part of the movie, you could just hear like.
Meanwhile, Godzilla, King of All Monsters, is playing.
I think we're gonna make Anders throw up. We got to stop talking about eggs.
New Patreon goal.
Look at him. He's like rubbing his eyes.
Make Anders yearn
It's already happened behind Patreon.
by talking about eggs. Yes. Wait, no, was that on this podcast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yes, joint bowling out super.
Was that? I don't think that was a crossover episode.
Yes,
that
it
was
was.
just about.
This is a deep cut, but
have you ever done a crossover episode?
yeah, this is many years ago. But we
It
did,
was.
and I
We
threw up at
watched
the
an
end.
anime on Karl Marx
Oh, right.
for an extended period of time, and well, it ended with Anders throwing up.
At the end of the anime, he eats hard-boiled eggs.
Is he
And
really?
It's,
No.
it's really structuralist.
just had-
They have a different approach to storytelling.
I did the old. I made a mistake, and I had kratom and then ate. And you're supposed to do it the other way around.
It's a kind of common mistake at the time, but that's neither here nor there. What's here is the events of the week. Have you seen these?
Remember when we were like sitting down, like, all right, what news events should we talk about this week? And then we just got off on eggs for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I wrote down pelicans, and we decided we had nothing to say about those, and so instead we spoke about eggs.
Is there a mini pool in the pelican beak? That's what we were discussing earlier today.
A mini pool?
Yeah, that's what I
Anders
always
was
thought.
arguing that a pelican's beak is so deep so that it can scoop up a fish alive and transport it.
Yeah,
which
it's like a sensory deprivation tank for a fish.
No, that's a cartoon logic.
Okay.
I know.
You're doing.
Well, you said storks.
I said storks have a safe beak that they can carry a baby in, and so the
Is a stork
pelican
just a
briefcase could
pelican?
be
No.
called a stork.
No, you got it all wrong. Okay, in cartoons, yes, pelican has a big dumpster of a beak thing.
It's got a dump truck beak.
That's how they are attracted to one another. Is the size
Wait.
of their.
But storks in cartoons, when they carry babies, they don't carry it in the beak.
Yeah.
They have a normal beak, but the beak holds the
diaper.
top of the weird blanket thing that
Yeah.
the baby is in.
Okay, that's
it's not-
correct. I'm thinking of Guinness, and that is because I'm a victim of advertising, and so I think of the way that the pelican consumes Guinness.
Right.
Is that a thing? That's in Guinness ads.
There are a bunch of old Guinness ads from when they would sell Guinness in Jamaica because, the Irish were down there.
Right.
And they would be like
Really?
a pelican.
They're easy to trick with birds.
Yeah, there's a
The
ton
Irish.
of like Jamaican Guinness ads.
Is that why they both say bacon like beer can
That's why.
in both accents?
Because of Guinness and this famous advertising campaign.
Right.
I think
Transnational sort of.
I might be
love.
like way out of my depth here, but I read somewhere that the Jamaican accent sounds like that because it's mixed with Irish because of the
Really?
Irish going down there and being, indentured servants or whatever.
This is a
That's the only
podcast for
explanation, I
learning,
think.
is what it is. And that's what we're here to talk about. And it's
Right.
not all Pelican facts.
Right near the beach. Can you hear it? It's like,
Right
yeah.
near the beach.
That's
Scottish, but okay.
Fuck me. Any
Right.
place
A little more
gingers get
music.
together is just confusing.
There's a little
for my brain.
more music to the Irish
I
accent.
know.
It's
Okay.
hard for me to do. I can do Scottish much better, even though
I can-
ethnically I am not.
hoity-toity-toy is
You have to
like,
make it sing-song in his own way.
I
There you go.
I.
The thing is that once you get to going, it's pretty easy to keep up. But then when you stop, then Scotland's right over there.
I'm a just
Right.
island boy.
Absolutely.
Right. I'm an island boy. The colony for, yeah.
We're going to be talking about
It's-
colonies today. We're going to be talking about islands today.
Right.
There's going to be a lot. You're going to be
What if
glad
they
you
were,
listened to this.
what if the island boys were trying to be Irish? They were fake Irish people.
That's something I've often said.
They dress up like Leprechaun from, the movies.
You ever notice how thin the
With the-
island boys are?
Yeah.
You ever wonder if like a famine kicked in right before the video started?
Well, the Leprechaun, isn't he inked? Doesn't he have tattoos? The Leprechaun in the horror movies?
Kind of dressed as like a short Uncle Sam.
Yeah. They could dress like him.
He's like a short pimp.
I'm just island boy.
Wait, okay.
Island boy.
Imagine one of those Venn diagram things. It's like Uncle Sam, a pimp, leprechauns, and in the middle, it's just like top hats.
There we go.
Oh, yes.
Island boys with top hats.
Two strong hands shaking over top hats.
I guess the problem I'm realizing is I think we've discussed this, the actual island boys from that video, they have a medicinal thing where they stare at the sun and it helps them with awakening their soul and stuff.
It's not a medicinal thing. They made that up.
They think it's medicinal, yeah. And if you are,
They have to do that.
and if
for
you're
health reasons.
if you're actually Irish, that will kill you. So
Right.
it doesn't work.
You'll burn alive like a ghost.
Yeah.
Like a vampire leaving the house. Well,
If you're Irish, you have to stare at a rainbow.
Staring at the bow. Yeah, there you go.
just Irish boy.
Aaron boy. Ireland is called Aaron in the official.
I did not know that. And that's really interesting, too. Well, there's a few things we wanted to talk about. Let's get back to the local elections later. Kamala Harris, Anders.
Well, yeah. So, Dark Brandon's been in the news. That's what they're calling
Have
him.
you seen this? He had Joe Biden. He has Donald Trump eyes when he's being based. He's Dark Brandon sometimes. Have you
Yeah, he's
seen
got
this?
those red Stalin eyes now.
Yeah, he's nationalizing things, Mac.
Yeah.
It's Dark Brandon now.
What happened? I feel like I slept in too long the other day. I woke up and everyone was like, he's kind of good now. It's weird.
Patriots are in control, Mac.
Yeah, he canceled basically, the smallest amount of student debt he could get away with. And,
Well, what's making him Dark Brandon is how upset it's made Republicans.
Right.
It's not the act itself. We're judging purely based on the screamo meter, like it's a hockey game.
Yeah.
it's its own reward, I suppose.
He's
But
set a really easy bar for himself to jump over by being like, Republicans are my friend for like the first
Right.
year or whatever of his
We
presidency.
need a strong Republican Party. Meghan McCain is my daughter now, stuff like that.
Yeah, so the fact that he's now like, actually they're bad, everyone's like, holy shit, dude.
Yeah, he'll serve them the tea at like the press meetings or whatever. And so they give him laser eyes because it's pretty much what he has.
yeah, I mean, what I think is true is we have not had in any of our lifetimes a president who's actually doing anything that's like tangibly improving anybody's
It's a remarkable instance
conditions.
of things.
Yeah,
There aren't usually things like this.
right, because Clinton was making things worse slightly less than the Republicans would have and taking credit for that. Like, hated to do it, but it would have been way worse if Bob Dole was in there. And then Obama was basically, a lame duck president, and the things that he would do were just so small and incremental that they just were not noticeable. And here it's like slightly noticeable to some people.
Well, I mean,
which
none
is-
of those presidents gave anybody money directly in a way
Yeah.
that this kind of crosses a boundary for.
Fellas, the bar is in the basement.
But anyway, so he's been The White House Twitter account has been exposing or just quote tweeting Republicans who are criticizing the very small student debt relief by pointing out their PPP loans, which have been expired, which is kind of like, it's fun, but it's also like that really does pale in comparison. The scraps you're throwing to, people who aren't billionaires are just so small compared to what Marjorie Taylor Greene is getting.
Yeah, she had $185,000 in PPP loans forgiven.
Jesus.
Something along those lines?
Yeah. And we're only canceling $10,000 worth of debt. I think it's slightly more if you're a Pell Grant recipient, but
she spent it all on Patreons to podcasts and stuff. She said that thing where somebody asked Mr. Dark Brandon this week about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and he went like, yeah, what is she like, the one that believes in some weird shit or something? Like, he was trying to say QAnon.
He like me for real.
He forgot what that was.
He's an extremely relatable president. That's never been our problem with him. He is very much like I wasn't even supposed to be here today kind of guy to be the leader of America. But
yeah, he immediately just pivoted into anyway.
Yeah. What's her concern?
But Pell Grants, that was a big thing for Kamala Harris's campaign. She's going to do all sorts of nice things for Pell Grant recipients, give them like some student debt relief. This is kind of her plan from like 2019. Right. It was like this very, very specific relief program for Pell Grant recipients.
Pell Grant recipients receive more money. Pell-ikins receive a Guinness. Government program, folk.
Pell Grant is when the government gives you a bunch of fish to keep in your mouth.
To keep them alive so you can transport them around.
Yeah.
I can only assume. Can't fact check this stuff. It's very obscure.
Ask Israel about it.
She is nowhere to be found right now.
Dear Israel, is a Pell Grant when you give fish to a man?
But it's alive due to your unique mouth.
It's just like, what?
Teach a man to fish. That's what they're going to
fish. Okay. All right. Okay. Kamala Harris.
Well, yeah. So she's, you would think his protege, his vice president, would be there for this to sort of try and absorb some of the credit, some of the good vibes, the dark vibes. Oh, and by the way, the White House.
Some of the dark vibes.
The White House Twitter account, you remember how New Jersey, the state's Twitter account would kind of go wild and out and have some fun dunks on neighboring states and
they
stuff.
They go poly what's going on? Mode sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their social media person is now working for the White House, which explains a lot. But Kamala Harris, who seems to not be on social media right now, she's kind of taking a back seat. She is in a state and visiting and going on a little vacation.
Interesting. A state, huh?
The state of Hawaii. Okay. She is just
this time
chilling there, and she's staying out of the limelight. And she was actually confronted by some 8th graders who asked her about a little place called Red Hill, which we're going to talk about now. In case you're not familiar, this is a military facility that's been there for many years and has been leaking gas into the water, poisoning people.
Right.
Very bad. A lot of bad side effects. People getting rashes, sick, ill.
I'm against it.
You would think that most people would be against it. I don't know that anybody's for it in terms of the leaking, but there are people who are kind of waffling on it, and Kamala Harris is kind of one of them. She just was like, keep it up, keep being...
This is interesting. She's never waffled before. She's always very clear in what she's trying to say and what her intention is politically.
She says, they tell her about the situation. She says, I agree with you. We need to handle that. It's a very big issue. And then encourages...
That's what I'm saying.
She says, and this is the quote from the article, and maybe it's a misquote, maybe they forgot a word, or maybe she did, but she says she encourages them to continue to active and lead. She got to do. Young person. So Good thing she
inspiring words from the vice president of the country.
She could have said anything. She could have said, please do not be active and lead. Follow.
Do you think Biden's just rubbing off on her? She just talks like him now?
Yeah, it's like a gas leak being in a room with that guy. The dark vibes have that. It's the lead radiating from his skin.
She kind of always sounds like she's like about to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you know.
She's probably on pills.
I'm here in Hawaii.
In some state.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
unless she has like extreme nerves all the time and it's just like, oh, active and lead. But for her job, I'd be surprised if she's this bad at talking without something else going on in her life. Who knows? Who knows what it is? Well, I would love to hear more about this Red Hill situation.
Yes, it is a bad situation. I wanted to talk about this for a while. It has been in the news, was more in the news slightly earlier in the year because the military made an announcement that they would try to shut it down, but it has not been, surprise, surprise, shut down yet.
This has never happened before. The military has never lied before.
The reason, though, that we're even talking about this and that there's any attention on it, any announcements, any politicians talking about it at all, is because of the pressure from organizers, a lot of them on Oahu, including someone we're going to be talking to now, who is an organizer with Oahu Water Protectors and Shutdown Red Hill Mutual Aid. Let's go to the tape.
We are now joined by Mikey from the Oahu Water Protectors, as well as the Shutdown Red Hill Mutual Aid Collective, also a filmmaker. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Anders. Thanks for having me.
Totally. And there's a lot here to sort of explore. But I guess for people who are maybe not familiar with Red Hill and the situation, how long has the Red Hill facility been around, and when did we start to learn the leaking problems?
Yeah, so Red Hill has been leaking for about as much as it has been around, which is since World War II. So during the invasion of Pearl Harbor in 1941, Red Hill was actually under construction already. They wanted an underground storage facility for a shit ton of fuel, basically, that would contain up to 250 million gallons of toxic jet fuel and marine diesel, sitting just 100 feet above our sole source aquifer that provides water to about 400,000 people on the island of Oahu. And it has been leaking ever since it completed construction. In fact, there was a report that a great reporter from Civil Beat uncovered recently, where the Navy's own contractors had found that there had been a major release of fuel within the first years of construction, but there's no accurate count of just how much. But it leaks kind of like ambiently, just from the little tiny holes that are in it. About 5,000 gallons estimated every single year, barring even a catastrophic leak, right? And so in 2014, there was a catastrophic leak where the Navy reported up to 27,000 gallons of jet fuel had leaked into the soil and groundwater. But then a whistleblower came forward and was like, actually, it's closer to 40,000. And this guy, Victor Peters, he actually told me in a recent interview that we did that he had some software projections that basically forecasted the possibility of the amount of time that fuel would take to get to our water source, if it did, was in the window of 2022. So there is a possibility, but no definitive way to prove that some of the incidences of reported illness prior to the major one that got international news could be a result of legacy leaks, right? But the main issue with these deteriorating, corroding tanks, this entire facility is deteriorating, but the tanks in particular, and the pipelines as well, the major leak in that got a bunch of people sick around Thanksgiving weekend was the major incident where thousands of people became ill and nearly 93,000 households that are still without clean water. And the Navy and state officials have given areas a clean bill of health since then and said the water's fine, drink the water, it's okay now. Yeah, it's fucking not. Don't drink it, especially if you see something in your water that looks like kind of like greasy, like an oily sheen, or if there is a detectable odor. But yeah, a lot of people are still getting sick. They're getting rashes. Their pets are getting ill. But in the first month of that crisis, it was alarming because pets were dying. There were reports, anecdotal, of much higher incidences of miscarriages, of premature births. Babies were breaking out in these terrible rashes, and it's harrowing to like see photos of mothers having to take of their own children's rashes, and constant crying and diarrhea and vomiting. Children have had to go through this too. Many of the survivors of this leak are still dealing with the potentially lifelong health effects of being poisoned. And the Navy is taking practically zero accountability for any of this. They gaslit, their own service people and civilians, both figuratively and literally in this case, right? They really have tried to de-radicalize people through this effort, where the Pentagon tried to let people know that they were handling this issue when they announced that they were going to shut down Red Hill. But now they're giving themselves, years to just come up with a plan of action to shut down Red Hill. And we think in the Oahu Water Protectors that this is just another of many stall tactics over the years. And they are hoping that people will probably just stop paying attention to the point where it's like a couple of years from now, they'll be like, hey, we fixed Red Hill just like we said we would. We don't even have to close it anymore. Hell, we don't even have to fucking defuel it, right? So, they've done stuff like this before. After the 2014 leaks, there was this administrative order of consent, or as they call it, the AOC. And yeah, it's a completely toothless thing that has no, serious oversight, because, the U.S. military is, the most powerful and genocidal institution in world history. So it's like, the EPA tells you something, the president tells you something, a state government tells you something, a health department and a local state government tells you something. It's just like, how do you tell them you have to do this, right? Like, what enforcement mechanism is in place, right? Yeah. It's just like, fuck you, we're the U.S. military. What are you going to do? Like, shoot us? So they're free to ignore any administrative order, even the emergency orders that were issued to them by our own governor, right? And this is where it gets kind of darkly hilarious and just kind of like really speaks to kind of the mind-boggling insanity that is kind of the logic of U.S. empire, right? Where the Secretary of the Navy, he comes here pretending to be concerned, pretending to care about the families, pretending to care about the people of Hawaii and Oahu in particular. And then in his first major press conference, he's asked, like, will you consider and will you follow the governor's and the Department of Health's emergency order? And he's like, I see it more as a request. And it's like, it's literally called an order, an emergency order. And he's like, yeah, no, it's more of a request. I view it as a request. And so because he viewed it as a request, it became a request, in his eyes, until his superior in the Pentagon, basically, we forced the issue. Community, national, international, and local indigenous community forced that issue to the forefront and made it impossible for them to say that they weren't going to shut down Red Hill. But one more thing that he said in that interview that was so telling was when he was asked, like, about mission readiness always being a primary concern. A reporter asked him, like, don't you think that, like, contaminated water might affect mission readiness for the troops? And he said, it's not the fuel itself that's making them sick. It's the fuel in the water that's making them sick. And yeah, it's just kind of galaxy brain shit that you can only like kind of like wonder, like, how do you get this way where that is something that you think makes sense to anyone, right? But I think this is kind of the logic of capital, where once you understand this entire different universe of logic that's used to justify capital accumulation, where you basically equate capital with life itself, right? Where we compare things like something as life-giving as water on the same or actually lesser importance than that of fuel and capital accumulation. And what you get is it even changes our idioms, right? Capital flows, income streams, liquid assets, to the point where we just equate money with life.
Wow. I mean, jet fuel may not melt steel beams, but it definitely has been making people sick. Whether it's in the water or not, it's not something people should be having in their bodies. But I mean, it seems like this has definitely gotten worse over the past few years, and it's been really interesting to watch how many people from different backgrounds are affected by this and involved in stopping this. A lot of people who are from military families, it looks like you can kind of see them being radicalized in real time over this issue. But as you acknowledged, it's not like it started in 2014. There's been leaking for a long time. Do we have a sense? I know there's probably no way we can know, but do we have a sense of how long the Pentagon has known about this? And could you also speak to the strategic importance of Red Hill just in terms of the American global empire?
Let me start with that last question first. The purpose of the Red Hill facility is for a world war. There is no other reason to have 250 million gallons of fuel stored in an underground facility except for a world war. And they admitted that to us in a guided tour that one of our members in Oahu Water Protectors was able to broker. So we actually recently visited Red Hill for the first and probably last time for us. And it was terrifying. You could smell fuel in the air before you even went into the facility, and you could definitely smell it when you stepped in. And
who conducted the tour, if I may ask?
It was a Navy official whose job it is to basically do propaganda tours like this. And there's a lot I could speak on about that, but in order to keep certain relationships, I have to not go into too much detail. But they gave us some real ridiculous explanations for certain things, like and this is all public too, but I'll get into that in a bit, because this is, I think, a really important thing to understand about things like Red Hill and the ideology that drives U.S. empire. And it is a death drive, right? It is the most like homicidal, genocidal death drives you could possibly imagine. Because it's like, first of all, why are you putting it 100 feet above our sole source aquifer? Why are you not spending nearly a fraction of the money to like build a new airport hangar as you are in maintaining this facility that sits above our sole source aquifer, our primary source of water on this island? Why are you allowing it to leak hundreds of thousands of gallons of fuel, this that we know of, over its nearing the end of its life cycle? Why are you covering things up even when it's poisoning your own service people? And just imagine what they're doing to people who are not their service people, right? All around the world, let alone in illegally occupied Hawaii. And you really kind of find an answer in the very rationale behind the existence of Red Hill in the first place, right? Because when you think about it, it doesn't even make any sense. Because if we are ever in World War III, it's not going to be fought at that scale with tankers and ships. And the Navy as a concept in many military and defense strategy circles is starting to be considered kind of obsolete in various ways, right? So, because, like their air defense and hypersonic missile technology is developing to such a degree where, a battleship won't do shit. There's no way to defend against a hypersonic missile from a carrier, I think, except for advanced weapons technology that I think the U.S. is quite actually far behind on. Because despite the fact that the U.S. spends orders of magnitude more than any other country, it's all grift and make work. The military industrial complex is designed to just spread, like a bajillion different parts for a single plane or a single tank to 48 different states, just to make work and to justify their existence in every state's economies, local economies. So efficiency and keeping up to date with technology to face a modern war is not the actual priority. It's just profit. And so going back to Red Hill, is like, we're not going to need Red Hill. We never needed Red Hill, because if we get to a world war, what we're going to have is thermonuclear holocaust. We're not going to have an extended air and water battle, right? Mm-hmm. That is the end of humanity. Yeah. So even when you need Red Hill, you're not going to need Red Hill. and here's the other thing, is like, I asked a pointed question on the ride back that I made sure to get a direct answer to. And I asked them, like, so how often do you actually use Red Hill to fuel anything that's in Pearl Harbor? Because the pipelines from the Red Hill facility on Kapukaki, the actual Hawaiian place name of Red Hill, it flows down. It uses the force of gravity. This is why they call it an engineering marvel, because, it takes, energy to pump things up, takes energy to pump things, horizontally, and you can just use the force of gravity, which takes much less energy and time to send that fuel down to the harbor, which is place name is Pu'uloa, not Pearl Harbor. It used to be, the reason that's called Pearl Harbor is because it was so flush with pearl oysters. It was the breadbasket of the entire island. But as soon as the Navy got to it and had access to it, they basically turned it into a cluster of Superfund sites. And what was once one of the most plentiful areas on the planet is now one of the most contaminated sites on the planet. But going back to that, the reason that they don't use that facility is because, it's wartime reserve. But also, I wonder, like, is the reason they rarely ever use it is because it's too dangerous, right? Are the pipelines too corroded? Victor Peters, the whistleblower, told me that when he was working there decades ago, it is literally in the aquifer, right? They just dug out a massive hole in Kapukaki in the 1940s with a single-lined tanks where you can't even have a gas station unless it's double-lined if you're going to have underground storage tank. These are single-lined. Some of the areas have corroded to like the thickness of like a slipper. They can't even fill it to the top anymore because of closer exposure to like air. It's too corroded at the top even to fill any of the tanks, I think, to the top anymore. So it can't even hold its carrying capacity that is stated at 250 million gallons. So it is, I think it might be so on its last legs that they don't actually use it that much specifically for that reason. Victor Peters basically said that when they were managing the facility and overseeing a lot of the operations, because it's in an aquifer, it's always raining because that's what an aquifer does. And the reason Hawaii has some of the cleanest water is because of this porous lava rock where the water percolates for years. Basically a natural, amazing filter like none other before it gets to our taps, right? And but as a result, when it rains through the entire mountain, right? So when you've carved something into that mountain, what's going to happen, right? All of that rain is just going to come through into the tunnel and fall directly on these pipes. And these are old pipes, right? So they're not waterproofed in the way that, modern systems are, and they corrode just from exposure to rainwater. So what Victor told me is they had to buy corrugated roofing, like the ones you see on like old shacks, like tin roofing, to put over the pipes so that they wouldn't corrode as rapidly as they were. Right. Like, this is what the U.S. military, with their $1 trillion budgets, was doing to address issues like that. And when obviously that blew my mind, but it made sense. And Victor told me, like, there was always money, plenty of money for new projects. What there isn't ever any money for is day-to-day maintenance, because that's not what they're for. They're not to operate. They're to generate capital, right? So, I mean, he didn't say that part because he's not, a communist. But this is one of the biggest problems in Hawaii that people who don't live here, who call themselves, progressives, don't understand. Where you can have like a self-described climate hawk like Senator Brian Schatz, right, or an anti-Trump hero like Senator Mazie Hirono, beloved by progressives on the continental U.S. imperial core. But when you look at their campaign finances, right, they both took massive donations from a company formerly known as Navitech, which is like a mom and pop imperialist outfit that designs ship hulls, whose former CEO, was recently indicted for embezzling allegedly millions of dollars in PPP funds and misstating the amount of employees in his company in order to defraud the government of COVID relief money. The Secretary of the Navy himself has a company where, in order to be nominated as Secretary of the Navy, he had to divest from about $25 to $50 million in owner equity shares from his defense contractor company that connects to Navy operations and repair and security and IT systems. So, of course, that's just going to be a revolving door for him. He's not going to be accountable to the people of Hawaii or be proactive on Red Hill. He's interested in building out the Navy fleet, right? Because once he gets out on the other side of his currently appointed position, he's going to go right back to what he was doing before, right? He doesn't give a shit about any of these families. So yeah, it's all just one big grift. And the people who claim to be the most proactive on the situation within politics are some of the most complicit, some of the people with the most blood on their hands. Like people like Schatz and Hirono, like they have taken tens of thousands of dollars, which is a lot of money in Hawaii politics over the years, from these ghouls like, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Bay Systems, Raytheon, you name it. They have accepted money and appropriated billions of dollars for imperialist projects in the nation of Hawaii. And more people need to hold them accountable to that, because they did nothing, right, next to nothing, when it came to Red Hill during the leaks in 2014. And now they're trying to take credit for shutting it down when it's not even shut down yet.
And Schatz, he's somebody who, either he or one of his interns, very active on social media, on Twitter.
Sometimes I wonder, like, when does he actually do his job? Because he's on Twitter all the time. And here's another thing is, like, it's so funny. Sorry to interrupt, but, like, I Googled, I Twitter searched the word Red Hill from his bajillion tweets, and never once does he actually say Red Hill on his most popular Twitter account until I called him out for it. And then the next day, he announced that he was going to, with part of his delegation, congressional delegation, calling for the shutdown of Red Hill. And that was the first time he ever typed it.
Oh, wow. So we went from zero to shut it down.
Yeah, cyberbullying works sometimes. Yeah, and with Mazie Hirono, too. She was one of the last holdouts. She usually always votes in lockstep with her congressional delegation. But she was holding back because Lockheed Martin is one of her biggest donors. And I think, I'm guessing that her retirement plans have something to do with consulting with them. That's just my guess, because she lobbies. She lobbies on that. She is completely in lockstep with the Chamber of Commerce that has this military affairs council that is very cozy with these defense contractors. In fact, the Military Affairs Council, which is an arm of Hawaii's Chamber of Commerce, which, if you look back far enough, every single one of the architects of the overthrow of Hawaii was a member of Chamber of Commerce.
Really?
And some of them were founding members. But anyway, like her pockets are just filled with blood money. The Military Affairs Council, after the leaks in Red Hill, they spent tens of thousands of dollars in DC lobbyists to make sure that nothing proactive was done about Red Hill. They killed bills and resolutions in city council, in local and state legislatures, in the Senate, to ensure that nothing proactive would be done about shutting down Red Hill, let alone even properly taking the steps necessary to repair it. And the main reason behind this was because our misrepresentatives in Congress were bought and paid for. So they claimed to be doing something about the problem when really they were taking money from the very people who were driving this problem to catastrophe. And here's the other thing I really want people to understand about kind of this end stage of capitalism that we're in, is there will always be a new frontier for capital accumulation until there's nothing, right? Or until we, as we say in Hawaii, huli the system revolution, right? And up and until that point, there will always be something. And even disasters, especially when it comes to the US military, can be monetized. This is why Schatz and Hirono and others like them are now so eager to address and appropriate billions of dollars, or hundreds of millions of dollars at least, to shutting down Red Hill and remediating what they can, because the military defense contractors are still involved. So once, you can no longer profit off of these capitalist imperialist projects, you can monetize the rot. And that's going to be another stage in this problem, even after we get them to successfully defuel and decommission Red Hill.
So, yeah, now a lot of these institutions are saying, okay, yep, shut it down. We got to do that. Let's get right on that. But you know what? When we shut this down, we got to be really, really careful when we're doing this. We got to go slowly and gently and just do this. It seems as much time possible. Are they actually going to shut it down, or is this just a stalling tactic?
Yeah, it's definitely a stalling tactic. And it's also hilarious because they basically did this full 180 where they lied to the public. Many of the members of Oahu Water Protectors have been on this issue for much longer than I have. Some as early as 2014, some even earlier. And that's, like almost a decade of organizing around this, calling for the shutdown of Red Hill. And it fell on deaf ears. And they were considered like, pennies, when in reality they were Cassandras saying that Troy would fall. They were sending out so many warnings. Engineers, environmental scientists, Kanaka Maoli, advocates for the land, for the water, anti-imperialist organizers like Hawaii Peace and Justice, and members within Sierra Club even, and just other Hawaiian-led organizations. They warned about it for years. Some people had warned about it for decades, and they ignored them and said, even up to late 2021, it's fine. What are you talking about? We got it under control. We're the U.S. military. Well, we wouldn't do that. Why don't you think we have this under control? It's fine. It's completely safe. There was this assistant secretary of the Navy who testified during a contested case hearing, and he was put on the spot by this amazing lawyer, David Henkin, from Earth Justice. And he was asked, can you tell me what's more important for life? Is it fuel or is it water? and he wouldn't definitively weigh in on that. He called it like a false premise and said, like, sometimes you need fuel and sometimes you need water. It's just more galaxy brain shit, right? So they then did this complete flip, and they're like, you know what? Actually, you guys were right. This facility is in its end of life phase. It is deteriorating. It is so dangerous, just like you said. In fact, you guys were so right that we can't defuel Red Hill right now because of how right you guys were, So now it's like what? So they're talking from both ends of their mouth, right? It's like, we were never wrong. We have this under control. Also, you were right. And we totally do not have this under control. And that's why it's going to take forever to defuel it. And they're going to switch back as soon as it becomes convenient for them. And this is why organizing is central to, an organization and to the movement. But our mobilization and our agitation has also been a critical component of this fight. Because one thing we learned on Mauna Kea in 2019, where Kia'i, indigenous protectors and settler comrades stood in the middle of the access road leading up to Mauna Kea to prevent the desecration of one of the most sacred sites in Hawaiian genealogy and cosmology, was that you needed to take control of the narrative. You need to wrest control away of the capitalist media narrative in order to win the people who are not at the front line with you, right? Because once you have that popular support, that's when they get very scared. And I was a part of the media team, and just these amazing Kanaka media artists, creators, writers, all these brilliant minds who are also active people in the movement. They formed this hui that I was honored to be a part of. And we spent every day basically coming up with immediate counter narratives and non-reactive stories about what was actually going on with Mauna Kea. Why not only it was sacred, but there were scientific arguments against the construction of the 30-meter telescope, that it was both desecration and despoliation and threatening the aquifer that it sits on top of. And all of the indigenous life forms, some of which only live on Mauna Kea, the only place on the planet where many of them live. And so also connecting all of that to the broader core struggle of the efforts to decolonize Hawaii and all indigenous lands, right? To return the lands to those who it was stolen from, and how they were never ceded, and they were never actually turned into a state with the consent of the Hawaiian people, and in particular, the people who were the ancestral protectors and literal relatives of that land. And that struggle, both on the media front and on the organizing and front line, has been an unbroken line from Red Hill to Mauna Kea to Kaho'olawe, to Kalama Valley, all the way back to the Ku'e petitions. And it's just an incredible, it is a very scary time to live on Oahu, because this is an existential crisis we're facing here. Dr. Kalihua Krug recently said, what we are facing is potentially the death of an island. And that is not hyperbole. That is a statement of fact. What we are facing, in my mind, if there's another catastrophic leak, or if the plume migrates completely into our municipal water supply, that is the end of life on Oahu as we know it. And the fact that that's not international front block A news every single day is a travesty. And the only reason I think it's not happening is because, we're just an island chain in the Pacific. And there is, some great conversations going on about it, but I hope there's more.
Yeah, well, that's why I wanted to have you on, especially because, I think, as you said, the reason this is being talked about now, the reason there's any action on it, from the powers that be is because of the struggles that have been happening on Oahu and with comrades elsewhere. But I do want to get a sense of like, if they wanted to shut it down, how easily could they do that? Because it sounds like it's not actually that time consuming to take the fuel out and just, give the land back, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to delete it. They keep saying. It's just like they can, what's so interesting is that in the contested case hearing, they were challenged on this as well. But they also, basically trotted out the notion that because this is wartime reserve, they could react rapidly in an emergency, where they could defuel an entire 12.5 million gallon tank in a matter of days, right? So they could actually defuel in maybe weeks or months. But if we are to actually believe them, the reason would be that it is actually too far gone to do so. But even if that is true, and it is possible, right? They're the U.S. military. They claim they can figure anything out. They have, access to the entire Mammon machine. Like they can just throw, a couple, 10,000 innocents into Moloch, as sacrifices to the god of capital, and make it happen. Like just they can figure it out because they have access to infinite money. They have all the Game Genie cheat codes to do so, and they should just do it. What was the question again?
How easily could they actually shut down Red Hill?
I don't really know how to answer that question because, So part of the problem with that question is that the military has been so opaque about everything that's been going on in that facility ever since it was created. And they have been the opposite of transparent even after thousands of their own service people were poisoned and are now demanding accountability and information about what's happening to them and to their families and to their babies and what's happening to their water. And so without giving us any of that information, especially the general public, frequent updates, it's hard to even know how fast they can actually defuel. We just know that they can and that they're not doing it as fast as they should. And because this is a ticking time bomb, right? As the Department of Health attorney ruled in the ruling in the contested case hearing, our time is very limited, right? It is, and this speaks to how Red Hill is not just a local environmental disaster. It is part of the broader climate crisis that has been exacerbated by the US military, the greatest polluter on the planet. And I think we need to understand all of these situations as part of a global terror campaign, primarily instigated by the United States and Western imperialist ruling class, who have planted ticking time bombs all over the earth that are set to go off in relatively close succession. And we're running out of time all over the world. And so what we need to do is not just defuel Red Hill as fast as possible and organize and build power, connecting union power and labor solidarity with international solidarity the way they used to so effectively prior to and through McCarthy era, and connect those contradictions under capitalism with indigenous right to self-determination, with ending policing in America, and justice for all of the legacy of the centuries of genocide that this entire country sits upon. And that's the only way we're going to ever get it together to actually be able to defuse these bombs.
Right. One of the big takeaways from this for me was and this was in one of the segments I was watching, is that it's not just Red Hill, right? This is a really egregious example, but the Pentagon, which has been very successful at greenwashing this, especially lately, is,
Yeah.
I think, a bigger polluter than most countries, right? It's a huge amount of carbon comes out of the Pentagon. There's so much waste that we don't even know about because it refuses to be audited. And if you actually want to reverse course on climate change, you have to do something about the Pentagon. What they've have done is they have people who are paid to study every little thing and say like this, that climate change is bad for quote unquote national security, so we should keep an eye on it. But they're not actually decarbonizing, and they can't
No.
decarbonize. It's baked into the system, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've been working on this really exciting documentary with Empire Files, Abby Martin and Mike Preisner. And they were here recently for RIMPAC, which is the Rim of the Pacific Games that happens every 2 years in Hawaii, where the U.S. military basically invites all of their imperialist allies and some people they might want to ease tensions with or normalize relations with to just bomb the shit out of Hawaii's land and water. And it's another one of those best kept secrets. It's this empire hiding out in the open. And it was, next to Red Hill, one of the most batshit things I had ever witnessed. So yeah, they I think they invited about 26 countries this year. So imagine all of those countries' fleets, like some of the worst client states and imperialists, like of course, like Japan, South Korea, the UK. Think of all the most evil countries. They come here during RIMPAC, and the thesis of the film, Earth's Greatest Enemy, which is the US military, is that even if every single country on the planet goes to net zero and meets their carbon drawdown targets in the time projected that the IPCC and all the other climate agreements say they need to, if the US military continues to exist, we're still headed for climate catastrophe. That's how much the US military pollutes this planet. And it's beyond just carbon emissions too, right? Because almost everywhere there is a US military installation, there is contamination, like with PFAS, right? This chemical and firefighting foam that is known to be a forever chemical that was recently found to be in rainwater everywhere on the planet, right? So this is a carcinogen that has all kinds of deleterious health effects, some of which we don't even know about yet, that thanks to the US military is in nearly everything. And so there are all these other forms of contamination that are exacerbating climate crisis that aren't necessarily just emissions that come out of a cargo plane, right? Or out of a tank engine. And so this is another thing that I think we need to keep in mind and understand, especially in our anti-imperialist organizing, is that it's not all just about power plants and fucking paper straws and like you said, greenwashing. It's about the existence of U.S. empire in general. And so to try to frame anything other than the abolition of the U.S. military as an answer to the climate crisis we are facing is like liberal bullshit. So and so one anecdote that I want to give you about RIMPAC is we somehow got to be a part of the press gaggle. They did no due diligence. It's like Google any of the three of us and you would immediately be like, we cannot have these people here. But it's like that's what a clusterfuck the military is, right? They can't even do that. The right hand never knows what the left is doing. And so or the left that's more like CIA FBI job, right? So like we went there and I went to Bellows Beach, and there's a base there. And they were practicing these amphibious landings where, a helicopter would come and drop off people in like a boat, and they would practice basically doing a D-Day style raid in miniature, right? But then they took me to the home raids, the urban raids, and they put us in an armored vehicle, and we drove down Bellows Beach, which I've been to so many times ever since I was a child. And behind this barbed wire fence that was hidden with, black mat. We go in there, and it's so just out of sight, and the walls are just high enough where you don't see it. But we go in, and it is a compound that looks like a Hollywood set, and there are aesthetic and architectural flourishes in this place where you see clothesline hangers and clothes hanging and flowing in the wind. There's like this giant ceramic cow. There's a wheelbarrow. There are certain elements all around it that make it look like a kind of like melange of both an Asian country, like a Middle Eastern country, like a Southeast Asian country, all kind of like rolled into one, just so every country that comes there can feel at home, in invading their own people.
So
and
this
I was
is
filming
like the spaceship that they're gonna put the world's elite in and shoot them into space, so they can each one. Can
oh my god! Yeah, no, yeah, basically. But yes, so they're doing these home raids, and we're filming from like 50 feet away as they're practicing these home raids. It was Tonga and I think New Zealand who we filmed practicing, and they bust these doors open, and the first thing I see hanging in this room that they're practicing it in urban raid in is a hanging photos of Kim Jong-il and Kim Jong-un. And I saw it in another place that they did a practicing home raid in, and then I basically asked like the lowest like officer I could find like on the hierarchy, like, can I go in there and just like get some B-roll real quick? And they're like, yeah, I guess. So I just went in. Later they told me, oh, you can't, please don't use that. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'll delete it. And of course I didn't delete it. But I went in there, and like they basically ransacked the entire place. They flip mattresses over. Everything's like just scattered on the floor. They just destroy shit. And it's like they're trained to do that, right? To terrorize people. And you could see like I think what looked like a some kind of sacred text next to an AK-47 replica sitting on like a small wooden table. You can see like places for children to sleep. And then, leaders of the DPRK hanging right in the living room. And it blew my mind. Like, and then they drove us to a place that looked like a mix between like maybe Afghanistan and Cuba, where there was like an antique, car sitting in an alleyway. And this blew my mind because I was like, this is like the set of a Western. That's how big this was. Like an entire town. And this is when we saw Sri Lanka. Right when all of that shit was happening, practicing the raid of like a insurgent compound. And it just blew my mind. Yeah, it was. And this is what the US military is doing frequently on all the islands of Hawaii where they have a military installation.
Jeez. Well, so this is going to be in the documentary you're releasing soon?
Yeah, this is not my documentary. Yeah, this is I'm just filming a lot of it.
Okay.
In this late stage. Yeah, so it's Mike and Abby's an Empire Files documentary called Earth's Greatest Enemy, and it's gonna be a trip.
Right. Well, yeah, definitely. Listeners, stay on the lookout for that. When that comes out, we'll promote it. But again, thank you, Mikey, so much.
Thank you so much. Mahalo. And yeah, you can find us on oahuwaterprotectors.org as well, and on all social media platforms.
Great.
What an interview.
Yes, that was Mikey. We'll link to that stuff in the show notes so you can lend a hand. And we're going to talk about one little more news item.
Right. If you have that in you at home. If you don't, I guess you could turn this off right now.
You're free to stop listening to the podcast at any
Whenever
moment.
you're tired, turn it off.
Tap out.
You
whenever.
you can finish it later. You can eat your vegetables later.
You can take years between listening to different parts and segments
Right.
of
Just
our
stop. You know it's bad for you.
Lie down.
Remember when Nintendo Wii would be like, "Hey, take a break, go outside."
Don't you have somebody to call or something? You played Wii Sports for 9 hours.
Yeah.
show. Was that good for you, exercise-wise?
The Wii?
Yeah, actually, I got really jacked playing
Yeah.
Nintendo Wii.
Jake had
Well,
this
that's what
incredible body.
That's
You
what
had
I've
to
heard
see it.
about virtual realities. They've been like, we really developed this thing that's a huge workout, and then just nobody wants to do it because they don't.
The Switch had this program called the Ring that it came with a peripheral you were supposed to get that was like a ring, and then it made you play games where you swish the ring around. And I have friends who swear that it's a great workout swishing the ring around. And I'm like, I have a gym membership. I'm not getting the exercise video game. Sounds stupid.
I mean, that sounds like a really good way to get jacked in 7 days.
Because it's the ring.
Oh.
Well, Mr. Lee, it appears you've won the internet again.
Yeah. She's like your personal trainer. She climbs out of the well.
She climbs up. If you can climb out of a well, you have incredible core strength,
Like, it's leg day.
high mobility, forearms, finger strength. She really
Fingernail
she
strength,
goes
really, and toenail strength.
against a wall like a bug in a way that is incredible to watch.
Yeah.
Shout out to the girl from the ring.
That's all core.
But do you know what else is core to our democracy? Our local New York elections that happened this last week.
Right. Our extremely gerrymandered and screwed up Senate districts, which we just had the primaries for.
It's pretty much like the girl from the ring is running these things.
Yeah, basically. She's the face of the Republican Party now.
I got to get the name up here.
The name of the girl from the ring, does she have one?
Yeah.
Really?
If you type in ring girl, it's going to show you a lot of models who work in wrestling. The ring girl is named, it's a Samara Morgan.
Oh, that's the actor.
No, it's
That's the name of the
That's the name of the character.
in the American one.
Morgan.
In the American one, they changed it to Morgan. They were like, people can't follow it if it's too Japanese.
She's
So she's
still-
Samara Smith.
That's weird. She's still Japanese, though, in the American one, right?
Yeah, well, I guess she's like, I don't know. She has an adoptive mother. She has a really complicated backstory. But she is resembling of a Japanese Onryo.
She's like got like a mixed background, and she's Kamala.
She gets her sushi at the well.
Wait, what was that from again?
Dan Nine.
Oh
Yeah,
God.
But, okay.
I can't.
Have I ever told the story about how when my friend's sister saw The Ring and we played prank on him?
No.
Have I not told you? So this is in like 2002 when The Ring came out.
Okay.
And was staying with my friend's family in North Carolina, and his teenage sister and her friend, they went out to see The Ring and came home and were like terrified. And so naturally we tried to play a prank on them. And we're like, yeah, there's this like crazy bloody guy running around and screaming things. I'm like, oh my God, lock all the windows. And then after like 5 minutes, my friend was like, yeah, we fooled you. It was a joke. And I was like, come on, we could have kept them going for like another hour.
They thought there was a
Bloody
bloody guy.
Yeah, that's all we said.
That was my favorite part is like, you don't know what's in this movie, but you're like, yeah, there's a bloody guy. There's a freak out there.
We didn't know it. We hadn't seen it yet.
He gives you a phone call. I don't know what happened.
But we fooled them, and they were mad at us. And then my friend, I was like, we should have, kept it going longer. And my friend was like, well, we could just do it again. So we tricked them twice in one night with the same exact gag. We got ketchup, put it on the window, and his sister,
the telltale sign of the bloody guy.
right? His sister was like, okay, you're playing another prank on us. And then she took the ketchup off the window and licked it. And then she took a second and was like, that's not ketchup.
Oh man,
It's got window shit on it.
It's old ketchup. Wait, did I ever tell you my ring story? Have I ever told this on this podcast?
How do you all have ring stories?
I have a really weird one. So I had never seen The Ring when this happened. This is when I was like in high school. I was like 17 or 18 or something. And I was hanging out in front of a bookstore with my friend and like went inside to use the bathroom, came outside to the spot that we were hanging out at. And there was this little package like wrapped in brown paper and it had like a note on it. And it said like, please take or whatever. I was like, okay. And I took it and then we got in my car and I passed it to my friends like, open that. What is that? This is weird, right? I just thought it was like a free book or something. It was a fucking cassette tape, right? And we were driving around. This is like right at the end of people having VCRs and stuff. So I don't think I had one. So we had to like drive around and like find another friend of ours like had a VH, like what do you call it? A VCR.
Right.
So we found my friend Daniela, and we went into her place. We found this, somebody like gave us this cassette tape. You mind if we play it like we use your VCR? So we put it in and it was the tape from The Ring That Kills You, but I had never seen it. She had, so she started screaming. Oh. And like, the third guy, I can't remember if he'd seen it or not or whatever, but then we like figured out like what it was. And in The Ring.
Did you make a copy?
I know. Hold on. The first thing that happened is I got a phone call, but I didn't know that you get a phone call in the movie. It was just somebody like trying to buy some weed or some shit, And so I pick up my phone and I answered it, and then she's like, "Oh my god!" Everyone's like, "Oh," And I didn't know that you start choking, but I have really bad allergies, so I was just like, "Oh," like I do that all the time. You hear it on the podcast.
Yeah, I've heard you do that
like,
every
what
day.
the fuck, dude? All this shit just happened to happen, and then I kind of like figured out like, oh, okay, this is from the movie The Ring.
Oh, this is beat by beat the events of The Ring.
So my friend, he was an orphan. And he really hated his grandmother that he lived with. So he took it home. He showed the tape to her immediately. It was like, I don't know, maybe it'll kill her, and like we like took it to school and stuff or whatever. It was like funny. It was legitimately unnerving, like because you're like, this is stupid, and then like the 7 days go by and you're like,
all right,
okay. What's gonna happen on Monday or whatever. But I watched it enough times to where I caught there's like a frame at the end of the tape. If you pause it, then there was like a web address like kind of in the corner of the screen. And I went to the web address and it was really freaky because it said my name. It said like, click here if you want to find out what happened to Jake.
Whoa.
And I was like, what the fuck? And so then I clicked on this, clicked through this website and eventually started to realize it was like a story that tied into The Ring about a character. And it just happened to have the same name as me. It was really weird.
This is an extremely time-specific story where there's VCRs and a website you can go to.
Yeah, just a website, not
there
a
was
social.
1 month this could have possibly taken place in 2001.
It was viral marketing for the second Ring movie. Like, eventually, if you clicked through all of it, it's like, okay, there's a second movie coming out, and there was like a map of the United States, and it was like, pass the tape on to somebody else or whatever, and like freak them out too.
Where did you find it again?
At a bookstore in Houston where I lived.
So this was a guerrilla marketing campaign.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was really freaky.
That's
though.
really cool, actually.
Yeah, it was cool. I think I just happened to have it just happened to be like a fake character that has my same name and shit.
What happened to advertising in this country? We used to put unnamed VCRs in bookstores and hope a guy named Jake finds it and curses people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Used to be a proper country, etc.
So there was an election, and some of our preferred candidates won, and then others did not.
That's right. So the maps were, I think I've explained this before. Many of our listeners already know, but in case you don't, the state Senate maps were challenged by Republicans, and because the Democrats decided to nominate this idiot judge, the original maps got thrown out. They had to do new maps, and lo and behold, the guy I was helping out, David Alexis, the Senate district he was running in, the map was redrawn to be less favorable. So Park Slope was actually taken out.
We would have put him in there, baby.
You would have put him in there had it not been
Slam
for
dunk.
there was a spoiler candidate. Because everybody, when we talked about on the show about Nomiki Coates, we were all worried about that she'd split the left-wing progressive vote.
In Queens.
Well, that district is Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan. It's a crazy big district, or it just stretches
By the way,
across.
any of the parts of these districts that touch Manhattan veer right dramatically.
Yeah. That oddly enough, that is, or perhaps not oddly, this is actually, unless I'm mistaken, she's going to be the only DSA elected to represent any part of Manhattan.
We're taking over.
Yeah.
We're approaching
Muppets
the
take it.
island.
Right.
We're taking over Roosevelt Island.
All of the music festivals are ours.
But so actually that'd be tight to party in the tramway thing that goes across the.
Have you ever been to Roosevelt Island? It's
Yeah.
fucking weird, man.
I wish it was me.
It looks like DLC content for Manhattan. Like,
There's all kind of ice zombies walking around.
Yeah. But anyway, so the real spoiler was I didn't even know about this person until a couple weeks ago. But there's this Keegan May Williams, I believe is her name, who's a lawyer running, also challenging the incumbent in Senate District 21. And she did not come close to winning, but she did peel off enough of the vote to where it looks like she cost David Alexis, our golden boy, the election. Because the incumbent, Kevin Parker, did not meet the 50% threshold. But that's all he needed was, I believe, 45.
Listeners will
something
remember
like that.
this is the guy who was throwing people down the stairs for
Yes.
20 years.
He has this
the
weird.
guy that like body slams people and shit. Doesn't
Yeah.
fucking
Untouchable.
He
Still in
jumps.
there.
He stomped on one of his employees' glasses and then stomped on his own tie. He loves stomping on things and beating people up.
He's like an angry horse.
He did
Yeah.
this stone cold stunner to a mailman.
But so the spoiler basically sent out these mailers that were like, David Alexis, he's got these nice sounding ideas, but he doesn't have the experience necessary and all this stuff that sort of presumed that he was a less viable candidate, which was actually the opposite of true. So it convinced enough people who are like, well, I definitely want Kevin Parker out. This Keegan person looks like she'll stand the better chance.
Right.
So
It's hard to stay informed about local elections
Yeah.
for a lot of people.
right. So that really sealed the deal there. But Kristen Gonzalez won. Jabari Bridgeport was reelected in my neck of the woods. So overall, a good night. And then, next time we'll do some more damage.
Socialist still +1 at the end of the day.
Yeah,
but the
so pick
moral
up.
of the story is spoilers. Get rid of them. Get them early. They're a problem.
Yeah.
People were right about Ralph Nader, and Anders was wrong.
I was gonna ask. I mean, with what you're saying about spoilers, is there any? I mean, does that, if we're gonna be consistent here, does that lend legitimacy to arguments about Bernie should have dropped out because he made everyone Susan Sarandon crazy?
Well, Bernie's never been a spoiler.
Yeah,
He's only running primaries.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
I mean, if you ask Ralph Nader, he would say that in retrospect he should have just run through the primary process.
And if you're talking about Jill Stein, she will eventually become president and needs that initial momentum. So that is not
Yeah.
a spoiler. That's just the beginning of an empire.
True.
Right.
She's the Mob Deeb.
Yeah.
She's a giant worm that will eventually rule us all.
I mean, in fairness, I don't think he would still contest the spoiler thing, but I think it's a little different when we're talking about primaries, general elections, and also the stakes. Well, it's different when you have an actual progressive option and you're splitting that vote. And arguably in 2000 there was not one. So
Yeah.
Okay.
that's what he would say.
That's fair enough. All right. We've discussed all of our topics and the ring. Let's close out here. Anybody have anything to plug at the end of the show?
For me, just the Red Hill stuff, which we'll link to in the show notes.
Red Hill stuff in the show notes. I'm doing another monthly show, September 16th at Caveat. Come to that. Game Boys, I'll put the link in the notes. Follow me on Twitter at Attack Test Kitchen. Jake, do you have anything?
No, I'm bartending for the entire summer because I'm trying to get rich $1 bill at a time. So, go into every bar in New York and maybe eventually you'll run into me. I'm not going to tell you where it is because I don't want someone to come in and kill me at my job.
Jake's plug is to find him.
Just find me.
It's a little place called Dime Square.
That's right.
The name
That's
of
right.
the bar.
I work at the Dime Square Humiliation Ritual Theater thing. We don't have the time to get into what that means, but read that thing. It was crazy.
Okay, it's finished.
It's finished.
It's finished.